Hi, my name is Catherine, and you've stumbled onto Accounting My Stitches, my YouTube channel where I talk about all things cross stitch. Today is Tuesday, July 15th, and I have a lot to share with you, so let's just dive right in. First, we have an FFO from an old project. It is the Empyrean style by Forbidden Fiber Co. I did this on 14 count Aida with the called for-ish DMC. They sold it as a kit with their own fabric and floss, but I just did it on my own. This is the Charles Craft Oatmeal 14 count Aida. I wanted to do it on a smaller fabric, honestly, so that it didn't end up quite this big, but I didn't have anything smaller available and I didn't want to have to wait to order something online. So I just jumped in with what I had and it turned out great. It still fit in this standard 12 by 16 frame. I pinned it this time using the tutorial from Elizabeth Ann Can Stitch and yeah, framed it. Also, when I said the called for-ish DMC, I wanted to make a note. They called for $37.99 for this black. And honestly, when it was first released, all we had was this first section, this like middle bit. And when I saw it, I was like, that looks like 310, no problem. And for whatever reason, I don't know why I went to the store to get supplies or to look for supplies before I actually bought the pattern. I don't know why. So I went to the store and I like looked for fabric that was going to be smaller than 14 count, but still be this kind of color, and had no luck. And so I come back home and thinking that that was 310. And then I bought the pattern and it was like, that's $37.99, or like that was the DMC conversion. And I didn't feel like going back out, honestly. And I was like, you know what? That looks like 310 to me. I'm just going to use 310. And I'm glad that I did because Taryn, it's weird to lean it against my face, but I guess that's what we're doing. Taryn is the black dragon, and he needed to be 310. So I'm glad that I went with that instead of $37.99. But yes, it is finished. This frame was weird. It's like a easy front load frame, which meant it didn't, like, you didn't take the back off. You just like snapped the front out. And yeah, it was strange. And you can tell that I shoved it in the corners, but you know, it's hung up, it's on my wall. As Contented Needleworker Kim said, I was framing this on a Zoom, and she said, you know, framing is a process, and done and on my wall is great. So yes, very excited to finally have this up and on my wall. I did not write down the dates of this, but I started it with the Empyrean Sal whenever it was released, sometime in February. I started working on the kind of pre-drop, and then I finished it with the finish of the Sal sometime in April, maybe end of April, I believe. But yes, very excited to have it up. Next, I have a regular finish to show you. It is I Survived by Soft Girl Stitches, done on 14 count Aida. Since you last saw it, I put in another 1,100 stitches to finish it. It started June 8th and finished July 10th. 14 stitchy days, 2,346 stitches total in this pattern. And also, I kept meaning to say, this color for the main book, I had in my stash for my grandmother. But when I started working on this, I realized that I wasn't going to have enough for all of the stitches that it needed. So I went out and bought another skein. And then thankfully, I took the time to compare the two before I started stitching. And when I did, I realized that there was a significant difference. And I didn't want to have like a line across, like a bright line where I obviously changed colors, which I knew about from the struggle of Jess from Stone Stitches with her Ragnarok. And so I decided to just alternate the strands kind of throughout. And so that's what gives it the really nice variegation that you see there. And I'm happy with it. And I actually managed to finish off this flower with the last of the old threads. I had to play thread chicken, but I won and I finished that whole flower with it. And so that's all used up and yeah, ready to go. But very happy this is done. I wanted to have a hoop wall in my bedroom, and so I intended to frame this in a hoop. I did the measurements before I started stitching. It was 5 inches, and so I said, okay, no problem, I'll frame it in a 6-inch hoop, not thinking about the fact that, you know, you can't fit a literal square peg into a round hole of a hoop. And I don't have enough fabric to put it in a bigger hoop. I did the math and I think it would fit in like an 8-inch hoop, but I don't have enough fabric for that because this was just an offcut and I wasn't thinking that hard about it. So instead of a hoop wall in my bedroom, it's going to be a small wall, which sounds better anyway. The next thing I have to show you is my compass with corals by LightUnicornDesigns. This is what it looked like last time. I'm doing this on 18 count Zweigart Opal Ada using 2 strands. Since you've last seen it, I did 1,157 stitches, which is about 3 weeks worth of whip into shape because I'm ahead now. I'm already done for this week. It's now at 88.4%. And honestly, I'm just ready to be done with it. The confetti is really intense. There's just over 2,000 stitches left though, so I know I can do it. Andrew is running all that way. I can stitch all this little bit that's left. I worked on filling in this over here. I went to my library's once a month crafty day and I actually found the stitchers. I was very happy. I don't know if they weren't there at previous ones or if I just didn't see them, but regardless, I found the people and I was very happy. And so I really just worked on filling this piece in at that day. But I worked more over here too with the coral and the top of the compass, the little hanger thing. So yes, we are very close. I'll be very relieved when it's over. Next is my tree of books by xCountingtheStarsx. This is what it looked like last time. I have done 1,088 stitches since you've last seen it. It's now at 12.25%. We are very close to 1/8 of the way done. And I'm very happy. What I really like about this project, I stitch in the Danish method when possible, out and back. And this has a lot of long, well, especially in the book itself, it has, and the black, a lot of just long, do a full row and come back, which is very satisfying. The book itself had a lot of confetti, not really confetti. It had about 25 different colors of beige, not literally, it's probably about 10. But that was tedious. But that portion is done now. And yeah, the vertical middle is right here in the middle of this pink. And so I am almost there. I don't know exactly where it goes out, maybe to here or so, but I'm close. I'll be very excited when I get over there. So yeah, I've worked, just up and over. I'm really enjoying this project. This is one of those that sometimes when I haven't worked on it for a while, I'm not really feeling called to work on it. But then when I do work on it, I'm like, oh, I love this. Like, this is all I want to stitch. The next project I have to show you is Yesterday I Was Clever by Tiny Modernist. You haven't seen this in a while because I started it shortly after I decided I had no goals. And apparently starting it and working on it for 2 days scratched the itch. And so this is what it looked like the last time you saw it a while ago. I haven't really felt called to work on it in a while until the 4th of July weekend when I was just in that mood. And then I did 864 stitches and now I'm up to 24%. I'm loving how it's turning out. This calls for dinky dyes for the variegated threads, but I didn't do that. Back in April, I was at Walmart and I just saw this random pack of variegated threads, 100% cotton, but like obviously not DMC. They are Coates and Clark brand. I'll hold it up in case anyone cares. But I got the whole bag for like $4. And so back in April when I bought it, I didn't know exactly what I'd use it for, but I figured I'd, throw it in somewhere it made sense. And this pattern, called for the variegated and I wanted that effect. And honestly, it's coming out really well. I'm really happy with how it's looking. I'm hopeful now that I'm whipping down a little bit that this will come out more often because I do like it. Now we're moving on to haul. I started dyeing my own fabric. The idea was I wanted this called for fabric, this gray, but I decided to try to dye it myself. This actually really closely matches the fabric I used for Yesterday I Was Clever, and I considered using that, but that's a 14 count, and Nothing against 14 count. I've been using it so much because that's really all that's available around me. And I just wanted to do it on something different. So I bought a huge thing of, both 16 and 18 count Ada because I realized I didn't have very much of either of those in my stash and just decided I wanted to have it just for some flexibility, just to try some different things. And so I did that, and then I bought the pearl gray Rit dye, and I dyed it using the Seattle Stitchers tutorial on how to dye fabric with Rit dye. And I like how it turned out, except it's blue. Here you go. And on camera, it looks a little more gray than it feels. And I'm sure it would have been fine to do on this, and maybe you can see more in the comparison, maybe not. This is blue. I was so frustrated. I was like, why is the gray Rit dye coming out blue? But the modeling looks nice, and honestly, I wasn't really trying for modeling. I wasn't sure I was going to do it right. I wasn't sure it was going to work. But for this fabric that I really didn't need modeling to be happy with it, I decided to give it a try. And it did work, which is nice. And yeah, this is blue. And I was so upset. And I was like, okay, what do I do? I'd also bought charcoal gray Rit dye at the time. And I looked online, and a lot of people I pulled up someone who had used the charcoal gray Rit dye on something, and it came out brown. And I was like, what? And so I put some of my charcoal gray Rit dye in a cup of water, and yes, it is brown. And I was like, okay, good to know. And so I mixed the charcoal gray with my pearl gray, and it honestly diluted the heck out of it. It had to stay in the water for a really long time, but I got exactly what I wanted. This is perfect, honestly, for my lighthouse. It's essentially the called for. It's still really light, like it's not that different from white. Part of me is like, why did I do that? But it's what I wanted. It's gray, and it'll just, add that little bit of interest to my lighthouse. No exact plans on when I'm going to start that, but I'm happy to have this ready. And if I didn't say it before, this is 16 count Ada. Moving on to plans. I will be at Midsummer Stitch this weekend. I'm very excited. I love all of the Lindy Stitches online events. I try to put what room I'm in on my Instagram story. So if you're interested in hanging out with me, feel free to check that out. Also, for my small wall, I want to have at least most of the freebies for events that I've gone to up on the small wall. And I haven't stitched any of the freebies from the previous Lindy Stitches events I went to. The first one I attended was the Jingle Ball in 2024, which I only found out about a couple of weeks before the event, but I had a good time. And as you might know, if you've gone to all of them, they all have a small freebie, which I've saved. I didn't really have any exact plans to stitch them, but I want to stitch all of them. And so I'm hoping that the Midsummer Stitch is going to have one that I can just work on so that one will be done. And then I'll probably work my way back on some of those freebies. Also, I kitted up a Christmas project for Christmas in July, the one Christmas project that I told myself I wanted to do this year. I haven't felt called to stitch on it yet, but maybe, who's to say? So keep an eye out, and you will find out when I decide to start that. That's all I have to share for now. I wish for you the serenity to accept the mistakes you cannot change, the courage to frog the ones you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thanks. Bye.